Let's talk about Traffic Manager first. So here I am on Azure portal, and as you can see, I've already created a Traffic Manager profile. There are no endpoints yet, and I want to show to you basically how you can configure it using the different routing methods. So let's start with the configuration. If I will go here, my current routing method sets to priority. So if I will go to endpoints, if I'm about to create an endpoint, it will ask me the regular questions like the type of the endpoint, the name and stuff like that, but there will be one mandatory parameter called priority. The idea here is, let's say if I have a few endpoints with priorities like 1, 2, and 3, then the Traffic Manager will always use the endpoint with the priority 1 first. And only if that endpoint is unavailable, it will then switch to the endpoint with priority 2 and stuff like that. So why you may want to use that? Let's say that you may have like two environments. The first one you use for production and the second one you use as a disaster recovery environment. In that case, you may want to say that the production environment has the priority 1 and the disaster recovery environment has the priority 2. In that case, only when production will go down, the traffic will be switched to the disaster recovery environment, but still the endpoint will be the same. Okay, so we're done with this one. Let's go to configuration and let's change the routing method to performance. I will save it. Okay, so now if I will go to endpoints, let me close this one here, and if I will add an endpoint, as you can see, it will basically ask me the type, the name, and that's basically it. So when we are talking about the performance profile, how it will actually understand to which exact endpoint you need to be redirected. In that case, it will basically measure the latency. And performance profile means that you will be always redirected to endpoint where you will have potentially lower latency. So basically the endpoint that is closer to you. Okay, that was it. Now let's go and check how it works with the geographic profile. I will save it again. Okay, and now if I will go to my endpoints, and if I will add a new endpoint, again, type, name, but here, as you can see, I have a geo mapping. So what I can do here, I can say, okay, so let's choose my first region. That will be, for example, Europe, country, let's say Ukraine. And I can also choose the state if needed. Let's add one more country here. That will be Europe. And that will be, I don't know, let's say Belarus, for example. Why not? So here, what I have basically my endpoint, and I define that for this endpoint, if the traffic basically will head it from either Ukraine or Belarus, it needs to be redirected to that particular address. I can create a second endpoint for other countries, for example, like as I was showing in my slides for UK, Sweden, and so on and so forth. And in this way, you can kind of implement what we were talking about, that from different countries basically will be redirected to different IP addresses. But the only one issue here is that in this case, it's super complicated then to manage it. So you may still use it in some of the scenarios, but for that scenario that I described at the beginning of my presentation, I'm not sure that this is really kind of a feasible scenario. Again, because all the extra complications that will came to manage those.